Go ahead, Mayor, you're good.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Centerville City Council meeting being held on September 19th at Centerville City Hall. We welcome all that are joining in person or by Zoom, and let's go around and get a roll call from our council members, starting at the end with Councilman Meekum.
Meekum, present.
Vince, present.
Hurst, present.
McEwen, present.
So we thank you. We have a quorum present and allows us to move forward and do business. I will begin with a legislative prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're very grateful for this opportunity that we have together as members of our Joyce City, and to be able to discuss the items that impact all our residents. Help us that we can have clear minds and to be able to have civil discussions and to be able to come up with ideas that benefit those residents. We're grateful for those that are serving on our behalf, both in the military, overseas, and on homeland, and also locally with our fire and police and others that serve us in other areas, religiously and civic. We're grateful, Father in heaven, for the freedoms that allow us to come together, and ask that we may always be mindful to defend those freedoms. And this we say in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. If you'd rise with me, repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we have the open session. This is where anybody that's online or here can come to the microphone and discuss what might be on their mind. We just encourage you to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes if you're so inclined, and identify who you are and where you're from. So that's now available. I don't know if anybody online, do you, Bryce?
No, I don't see anybody.
Good. Seeing no comments for the open session, we're going to skip, we'll come back to the presentation. We're going to go to the business items, and this is the pickleball courts update is the first thing. And Bruce, you want to come up and kick that off for us?
I'm going to pass out a few flyers for Mike. It's the breakout costs of option 1 and option 2 of the 2 different concept plans. If you'll take one of each and pass it on.
Okay.
It'll also be, it's also, I think you have it also guys to show.
Why is it so weird?
Thanks, Bruce. That's all you had? Yeah.
Mike is awesome. His firm, if you want to know, design and project managers for Island View Park renovation, and they've done multiple projects throughout the state and do a wonderful job. They're a pleasure to work with.
Bruce.
Welcome, Mike. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too, everyone.
Just the one page, right?
Is it just one page, Bruce?
No, one of each.
Oh, okay.
Should be option 1 and option 2.
Whenever you're ready, Mike.
All right. So I'll just give you a quick background. So earlier this spring, as sort of the process Bruce was pursuing for the grant, trying to secure grants, we've developed just a real preliminary concept, which is basically concept 1, which is up right now. And so I'll just kind of walk you through. So we developed this one, and then as we had the kickoff meeting, we got input from city staff to kind of kind of refine it a little bit, and that's where we came up with option 2. Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, because you talk to the microphone.
You can't, yeah, you have to talk and then he's got a point.
Okay. Can you,
Yeah.
is this, can you hear me with it in this? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. So, just a little bit quick background, and you guys probably already know this, but, so with the parking lot on the west, that's the existing parking lot on, in the park. So with the I-15 expansion, eventually that parking lot will have to move to the east, and that's kind of where you see the kind of the green where we're showing just the lawn area with this new concept. So that, we've kind of allocated that setback to fit that parking lot once that I-15's widened. And so really just kind of creating that east-west walk that ties into that existing sidewalk for now by the parking lot. Yeah, and then they've got the existing asphalt path to the north, and then you got this existing, yep. And so that path, the idea is that once that's expanded, then that all goes away, and that large path that you see on the west side will eventually be your parking lot, the path along the parking lot. And so we've kind of situated that. So with this concept, we have, you can kind of see where we got kind of these nodes, those 4 nodes. So that's access into the courts with a shade structure over some benches. And then between those benches, there's an opening kind of in front of those that you can access the courts from that west side. Yep. And then, so we're showing the 8 pickleball courts, which actually fit a little bit better once we got the survey. We originally did the concept off the aerial, and it was a little bit tighter, so with the survey, we actually got a little bit more room, so it fits in really nice without having to modify that path to the north. And so, the parameters that we've designed this off is, one, the parking lot to the west, and then on the east, we're just trying to maximize the lawn area where the existing play field is now, so we're not encroaching on that, try to minimize that as much as possible. And then kind of where that main path comes in from the west, from the parking lot now, that goes through that, so there's a center spine. So it's kind of a central corridor there. You can see 2 benches there in the middle, and then gates that access the courts on each side there. So in this scenario, we're really accessing it kind of on the ends of the courts, on the far south, and then the far north, and then in the center. So, and then we do have openings, just a small openings at the net on both sides, so you can access it from the east as well. And so really, pretty simple concept overall. 8-foot fence, the perimeter, and then we kind of step down. You can see that green line kind of in the center court, and that would step down to a 4-foot fence there, just because you don't really need that height between courts. And then, so this scenario, we are lighting. We are showing lighting, and really, as far as planting, we were told that we just want to kind of keep the trees to a minimum to minimize leaf litter on the court. So we're just kind of showing those 4 trees kind of in that central corridor. And then some plantings there kind of the end, just because they're tight. Doesn't make a lot of sense to have lawn in their areas, and then it just kind of creates a little bit more visual interest as you're coming in from those ends. So, and then we do have plantings that you can see a little bit right there where those shade structures are as well. So, yeah, this option, this is the more cost-effective option. Can we scroll? I guess any questions on this concept, and walk you through concept 2? Okay. Do you want to switch to concept?
Yeah, I do have a question. You said 4 trees, but
Yep.
you're showing like shrubs and evergreen trees. Well, not any evergreen trees, but
Yeah, so those are all
Some
zeroed
shrubs.
out, so except for the deciduous. So those are, so there isn't any dollar amount except for those trees.
No, there is. On concept, on your cost estimate of concept one, you have 116 5-gallon shrubs, 110 square foot mulch with weed control fabric. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're just showing the 4 trees, and then those 5-gallon shrubs are just at those ends, and then by the shade.
North and
Okay.
south ends,
Yeah.
and then also the walkways, it looks like.
Yeah. And then the lawn, the lawn area, that's one thing, just because the parking lot's gonna be, it sounds like a couple of years out, right, Bruce? So,
They've told us 3 years.
3 years. So that's kind of a cost, unfortunately, because, there's an existing, basin there. To the north, you can kind of see those white lines. We'd pretty much have to do earthwork across that whole side. Otherwise, if that was flat, we could have just benched in the walks and been done with it, but, it's gonna, so we are, that is a lot of lawn area and new irrigation that would need to happen in that lawn space, so. Unless if you, didn't want it, you could just seed it or something until the time being, I mean, that's something we could look at, but. So, any other questions on that one? So I guess we'll switch to concept 2. And,
Sorry. Give me a sec. Was in it?
So as we met with the city, the kickoff meeting, some of the things that came up was maybe look at, if the city is wanting to do tournaments here, is maybe adding like a restroom and a concession. So on that south end, we've got those that are pretty much a mirrored footprint, but the idea is the one on the left would be like a concessions building, and then the restroom on the right. I mean, it could be vice versa too, but another thing, I thought this arrangement functionally works better with the kind of the pedestrian spine in the middle versus on the west side. That way we can do like bleacher seating where it's kind of centered on the middle, where, if they're having tournaments, you could view courts on both sides, where otherwise you're just at the kind of the mercy on that first one, where the west courts are going to be kind of, I guess the east courts aren't going to be optimal for like a tournament setting with bleachers or a significant amount of seating. So the other thing with this option, just because we do have bleachers in this one versus the option one where we just had benches, we just needed a little extra space in the middle, so there's extra cost with just additional, concrete paving. And then there was talk about possibly having food truck parking to the south there, right there, for events or tournaments if they do occur. And then we'd have like a, power receptacle pedestals for the food trucks to plug in, so. But, again, kind of pretty similar. I guess the difference with this one, besides just kind of the different court layout, is just by the nature of separating those courts like it is, there is additional expense by doing that with the post-tension slabs, because ideally they just work better to do 2 courts side by side, where this, they would have to do separate cores basically per court to just how the stresses work across, there's just more uneven load across that narrow section of post-tension slab. And then you'd have additional lights as well. You're basically, that whole center corridor is kind of all those fixtures in the middle are, would be additional to concept one. So, and then we just kind of did a little spin, you know, where you see the trees on the west side, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a bench underneath there. So you got kind of those walks split where that goes to each side of the tree, and then you'd have some plantings and a tree in the middle just to provide shade over those benches, which, you know, the west, I mean, that's going to be pretty brutal in the summer on the west exposure, so.
Benches on the.
Yeah, and there is benches on the east side as
Same
well.
on the other.
Yeah,
Both concepts.
yeah. Yeah, this one, so the east, actually, in this scenario, just to kind of try to minimize costs, the walk on that east side is a little bit tighter to the courts. You just, basically just has enough room to where we can get the benches in there and the light pole bases. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much it as far as the concept.
Can I ask you on this option two, where's the concessions and storage building? You might have mentioned it.
Yeah, so it would be one of those structures, that rectangular, kind of the south.
Okay.
And the concession is sort of like a combination. At least the products have been looking at where one side could be concession and then at the other side could be a storage.
So we're not looking at like concession. We're more looking at it as a building to run and facilitate out of. So like check in, like if the council's goal is to run tournaments and leagues and have this be a fully functioning facility, that will be a key part to doing this the right way the first time. We don't want to do concessions out of there. We'd rather bring in food trucks and outside vendors just because of staff costs and things like that. So when you say concessions, it's more of a small facilitated service building that's going to have storage for tournament equipment, sound system, you know, all that kind of stuff, so.
Okay. And I'm assuming, so, sorry, I just noticed restroom was above it, so restrooms, one side, small building for,
Yeah.
operation.
Similar size,
Yeah.
footprint for either way.
Okay,
Yeah, and what we talked about is that would be basically like a four restroom, so it's not like you walk in and there's multiple stalls. And of course, we're still very preliminary. You know, we've got some vendor information to get their costs, but we really haven't went through the process and presented specific, floor plans or anything like that.
So, Mike, when I look at the budget on both of them, utilities is higher on the second one. That's because more lights with that
Yeah.
design.
Yep.
Like a restroom building.
Yeah, so you got some restroom costs, the pedestal, the power pedestal.
Our sewer runs up right up here, but, so it's pretty close, but there'll be some costs connecting sewer and water.
Yeah, and we haven't engaged it with the electrical engineer yet, and so that's, again, these are really pretty preliminary. I think they're safe budget numbers, but, as we get through the details, we got to kind of figure out, what our, power is available, the distance is running, lines and all that, but doing photometrics on the courts as far as the light distribution and all that. And as far as like the civil costs, so we did get costs from ESI. Just kind of looking at them, we haven't really vetted to like exactly what assumptions they've put in theirs as far as all the infrastructure. So there's a little bit of probably fine tuning definitely to, we might have some redundant costs as far as like just site demo prep and all that, but once we get the grading plan, we'll have a better idea of volumes. Because the other thing with both these options, since the existing park has that basin, anytime you bring in fill material to level that out, it's going to cost a little bit more because it's going to have to be structural. So that's definitely an element. And there is a pretty main water line that we'll have to reroute, or we were talking about rerouting it. It's basically happens to be right down where the courts are on that east side. But just our discussions is like, do we want to, we could build over the top, but we just felt like it was a better move to reroute that water line.
what is the you said a water line? Mm-hmm. What size, and is it an irrigation line, or?
Yeah, it's a 6-inch blue brute.
Michael?
It's a 6-inch Blue Brute irrigation line that runs the perimeter of the park, and then all of the irrigation comes off of that perimeter loop.
Yeah. And you could do it, and you might not have a problem, but we just, if you do ever have a problem, it just could be a little bit more involved, so. And you could, always reroute it later, but the problem is what we talked about is if you did have a leak, you might not know about the leak until there's
No, that
obvious
would be, that would be foolish
Yeah,
not to reroute it. I
yeah.
just,
damage.
Has the Parks Committee weighed in on whether or not they want the ability to do tournaments?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do.
Did you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna build a nice, if we're gonna spend $1.7 million, then I think we're gonna want to do tournaments and have it be part of our programming and
But
our
from,
events and,
but from what I understand, if you want to do tournaments, you really should be aiming for 12 courts. So really, we're going to
Over
be,
16 probably should.
yeah, so you're supplementing, hopefully, maybe at Farmington and there's a regional tournament going on, we might support it as maybe an off, but I'm not quite sure you're going to track without going 12 courts, but at the same time, I don't think we want to go 12 courts because we don't want to infringe on that baseball field any more than we currently are. So I think we're limited to the 8, but I'm not quite sure it's going to be tournaments to the scale.
well, and I don't think I'm not talking like statewide tournaments that are gonna take business away from other places, but like, we could run a
Comp.
tournament
Comp tournaments or whatever.
for 4th of July, we could run a tournament for, multiple events that we have.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I don't know how the pickleball people that have came and asked us, they're not going to want these tied up in tournaments all the time. I mean, they're all waiting for pickleball courts. I don't think they're going to be happy if every Saturday there's pickleball tournament there and you can't get on.
They'll be in the tournament. So, I mean, there's that concern, but at the same time, it would be great to generate some revenue to help take on some of this cost, right?
Right.
So,
That's what I'm
That's-
saying. I can kind of see both, the revenue would be great, but you're not going to have,
no, not every,
Tournaments and
not
their
every
kids.
weekend. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and I don't think every night either. I mean, it's gonna be like a Tuesday, Thursday, and then a tournament 2 or 3 times a year. I mean, it's not gonna
Yeah,
be.
no, it's not going to be a lot.
but if we're only going to have a little bit of tournament, is it worth the extra money we're putting in to have it?
And I don't know if you need necessarily a concession stand to run. I don't.
Yeah, so I
You
mean-
could set up a table almost just as easy.
That's what I'm
and call it
thinking. You
good,
could
but-
set up a canopy for something like that.
And you can add, again, you can gauge it and phase this in and look at just doing some and then adding depending on how we like it and where it's going and then we can evaluate where we are, but I don't know if you need to start off. I don't know.
I mean, that part would-
Offering my editorial, but.
Yeah, and I think that part's totally fine, but I really think the bathroom part should be very much considered because of the impact that that park has. I mean, it's very well used, not just for pickleball, but having a bathroom on that western side of the park would be really helpful.
Because you have
A
one
lot
on,
of complaints about that over time.
because you have one on the east, right, and in the middle, right? So, yeah.
And again, the intent is this to be a restroom that could be, that's insulated, heated, and can be used in the cold, right? Isn't that how we designed it? So it can last a little bit further into October. You
Yeah.
winterize when? October 15th, so again, it doesn't necessarily get cold. People still use pickleball well into November.
And we've worked, there's been several projects we've worked on recently where because once you go and insulate a building, which drives up costs, I guess like with the CXT restroom, like by code, you have to have it insulated if you're gonna heat it, but we've been able to get around it, and this is something we'd have to vet with the building inspector. But as long as we just heat the mechanical aspect of it, just to keep it above freezing, and they've allowed us to do it on a couple other projects in other
I
cities.
can see that.
I don't know about the bleachers. I mean, do you think we're going to have a big enough?
Farmington, if you go to Farmington, they are used quite often by, people watching, or just hanging out, or
Well,
taking a
they'll-
break between their games, they'll hang out on
The
the
dilemma you have in pickleball, it's a really popular, and people hang their paddle outside to play next. And those are the people that they're usually sitting waiting on the bleachers. It's the most effective system out there to allow people to be able to use the courts. And so they're hanging their paddle there, and when the game finishes, boom, those people are then going in next. And you're not going to have that all the time, but you're going to have it quite a bit.
Well, are we talking benches or are we talking bleachers? I mean,
So this one's a combination of both, where we've got bleachers in the middle and then benches on the outside.
So there's three high, there's three.
Use
You
the
gotta
mic.
use the mic.
So it's 2 bleachers at each, so there's 2 here, one facing this way, one facing this way, and there's 3, similar to the ones that are at the baseball fields right now, they're 3 high, 3 benches high. So there's 3 benches high facing this way, 3 benches high facing that way, and a set at each set, and then you have the park benches that are just on the other sides. That could, 6 maybe 8 foot bench, whatever, yeah.
And the thought,
And then these have shade structures over the top of these bleachers.
yeah, and the east one's not, is, we'll probably do like maybe a backless bench on the east. That way somebody can sit there and watch
Yep.
the courts, or they can be watching towards the field if somebody's playing on the field.
Yeah, you could also watch soccer there, or football, or.
But one of the number one complaint, or the most comments we get as far as is with pickleball courts is like the restrooms is a big one, like not having restrooms, and then the shade, just having shade over the seating, like you get out there in a 90-degree, just even if you're not playing, just having the shade where you're sitting is always.
But we don't like the shade because it gets on the court, and who's going to clean that up?
Yeah, right, yeah.
You fall onto the court, and then you got to deal with it.
Yeah, that's the juggling act.
Mike, this distance is about 20 feet, is that right?
It is 20, yeah.
20 feet and that's one of the costs for that, is the extra 20 feet of concrete down the middle.
I mean, I guess I need to back up a little bit. I'm looking at these estimates. One's over 2 million, one's 1.74. We budgeted 500,000. So how are we paying for this?
yeah.
Great question.
I said the same thing.
8?
It was a little bit above what we budgeted.
So Bruce has inquired, I don't want to steal your thunder, but he's trying to see if we can get anything more from the Land Water Conservation Fund. We requested 250, I believe.
A grant request for what we thought was half of the cost of this and the playground. So I did a grant request for 400,000 and then realized it's going to cost a lot more. And so I went back and said, hey, if there's any grant money available, can we increase our request? You can request up to 50% of a project. And so I asked them, we'd like to request 700,000. And there is a chance, they haven't given me any promises, but there is a chance that they might honor the additional, but I did get an email today saying that it's looking like we're going to get our initial request granted of our 400,000.
So that's a decision for council to let us know. I mean, we have a shortfall of potentially 1.25 million. And so the question is, do we want to continue going down this route? Are there any other alternatives you'd like us to consider as staff or for G. Brown Design to help us? You've got that in front of you, and you can have some time to look over this, and we can have a follow-up meeting. It could be concept 2, but maybe without the concessions, or maybe ESI cuts down their earthwork cost, and Kevin's not paying attention to me. But I mean, that's really where we are.
Church Well could pay for this project, maybe.
Church Well Revenue could pay for the project. So I mean, you don't have to decide tonight, but think about it. Let's bring this back to maybe a work session to maybe evaluate a few more items with this. But
I know we've discussed this, and I know I'm not changing anyone's minds, but I do look at the landscaping cost alone, and I'm like, one of them is close to, it's 143,000, one is about 100,000. We still have a vacant parcel out here that's not landscaped at all, and I'm like, this isn't really like our lowest cost option, especially for rerouting irrigation lines and everything else, so.
You know, I had that thought also, that we could do similar to what we've done over here at the Randall property, not put in irrigation, and because we know it's going to be torn up in 3 years, and just, you know, we put in topsoil and we just do some weed control for a couple of seasons, you know.
Oh, on the west side?
On these large grass areas, you know, don't worry about irrigation system, and we just grade it, and we can mow it keep the weeds mowed, you know, similar to the wetland area. I don't know, we just mowed all the wetland down area, and you know, we mow down all the weeds and keep it looking somewhat presentable until.
And that's what I was thinking, is that's a lot of money to put in when we think it's gonna be gone in 3 years. I don't have a problem with,
I completely agree with that it seems ridiculous to spend that amount of money, but I also really don't love the idea of our parks not being landscaped.
Yeah, it will
think that's a little
look bad for a couple years, but we could put signs out that say, this is temporary until new parking is built.
Temporary is subjective.
Due to UDOT not getting the freeway done quicker.
And I was kind of hoping that with this cost estimate, maybe you had a cost in here of like, oh, this is gonna cover the parking too, but there's no parking in here. If this is,
UDOT will pay for all
Hopefully
of
they
that.
I know they will, but I was hoping that maybe
But
that
they-
was why it was so high.
But what they may not, the new alignment may not take away any of the parking, which we would be on our own to cover that gap between the pickleball courts and there. I do still feel that little knuckle of parking that goes to the concession, no down. That going, it's just a huge headache, and getting rid of that and extending out would be helpful in flow of traffic in that area. I mean, every time I come here and it's busy, it's just people backing up, and my stepdad got into an accident because he backed into somebody that was also backing out. Anyway.
No, I agree,
When you're watching the kids play baseball.
that is a difficult.
But we're gonna have some of that cost, I think, eventually, but I don't think we should bank on UDOT helping us at all with any of those improvements.
But if they're not helping us, the parking lot's not coming east, it will.
I still think it should come east, but that's a separate conversation with the.
So then you're really talking about more than,
But that doesn't really have anything to do with
Doesn't
the
really have
pickleball.
And that doesn't,
Doesn't really have
that's a
anything to do
phase,
with
right? That
pickleball
doesn't have to
courts.
happen right now. This could be a fully functional pickleball court without making that investment in your parking.
frankly, if they didn't come so far east, you could get your 12 courts in because you just, instead of landscaping grass on the west side, you could put 4 more.
That's true, you could do
So,
more
That
pickleball.
was another consideration, is if parking is not going to be changed, then let's move that back to the west a little bit further and abut it up against those parking stalls. And then that still frees up and preserves the soccer and the baseball and all those other
You
practices
wouldn't
that
have to
happen
move
there.
your irrigation line.
But you still run that risk if UDOT could change their mind and they say, you know what, never mind, we're going to take your parking. Now
And
they have to replace it.
they do have to replace it, and in our talks with them, one of their ideas of replacing it is this land here to the north could possibly be purchased by UDOT and given to the park as parking.
So again, I hate to like beat a dead horse, but if we don't know what UDOT's doing, why are we doing this plan this way? Like, this is exactly what I was arguing when we first looked at this, is if we don't know how far they're coming and how they're impacting our parking lot, I don't know if we really want to be putting pickleball courts in, because I'd like to see the green grass maximized in this park, because every time I drive by it, which is several nights a week, all of that area where those pickleball courts are, there are kids playing. They're working with their coaches, and soccer and football, and so.
Well, we saw what happened just working with them on the off-ramp. I mean, boom, here was the concept that was gonna be the off-ramp, and then that changed. Or we saw it with what, 400 West and Market Street as well, too. I mean, that changes. So it's a really good point. I'll back Councilwoman Hurst on that. You know, that they could flip and be coming in and tearing out courts as well, too. You know, so we really, I mean, it's one of those that you know, we can't hold them to it. They can do whatever they want almost, and Kevin's gonna address that, it sounds
I
like.
was gonna say,
Yeah,
I
let
think
me
we're
weigh in
further
on that.
along than that, though, aren't we, Kevin?
Let me weigh in on that just a little bit. So we have met recently with them. Their draft EIS is complete, so they're getting a little closer. They've ruled out the quick lane,
The
the fast lane.
yes.
The hot route.
I
The
went-
hot lane, the hot.
Yeah,
They
the
ruled
hot-
that out, which
Oh,
is
and
sure.
Yeah,
the
they
exit?
did.
Yes, they've taken that alternative off the board, off the table, so
Kinda like
they
that.
have identified a little bit better and more clearly what the corridor is going to look like. We met with them, it's been a month and a half ago. They did come in and say that they thought they would actually be able to save all of this existing parking and just move our sidewalk up against that parking. We talked about the irrigation reservoir, and we may need to move a hatch that's on top of that irrigation reservoir. We're hoping we can put a sidewalk over the top of that and not have to move it. So they are getting closer to kind of a corridor width, a future corridor width. So we're feeling more confident about, you know, and the fact that they've narrowed it down to where one of the main reasons they decided not to do the hot lane is because of the width and the impacts. It was greater with that, and so that is something that they've narrowed down a little bit better for us.
But how many changes in 6 to 9 months, Lucy? I mean, we're gonna see that same thing over the next 6 to 9 months, no matter what you say that they've narrowed it down for us. It's gonna be changing still. We've seen massive changes since we first met with them, with Farmington that first time.
Well, I think we have, but I think we're going in this direction. Here's the end, and we were here, and so we've seen all these things, but now we're to here. We don't have as big a chance of seeing the big
It does seem like
changes.
the impact to the park is less. Right? I mean, Kevin, do you
Yeah, and I
agree
just
with
bring
that?
that up as an update, so
Yeah,
I
and
just
I'm not,
bring, yeah.
yeah, and I agree with you on that. I called Tiffany Pocock it's probably been a few months ago, about, somebody had called me and asked some questions about it, and I clarified with her, and it did seem like they maybe aren't coming as far east as we originally, but that's exactly why I'm saying, gosh, we're talking about a $2 million pickleball court setup that really, if they're not gonna impact our parking lot, I'd rather see it pushed all the way to the west and,
Well, one thought is that, and I wish this aerial showed a little bit more, but one thought was that we could mirror the south parking lot area. We could mirror that to the north and pick up another, I don't know how many stalls that would be, but we kind of reserved that area so that we could
Okay.
build additional parking.
you want some
To
additional
support-
parking.
To
Okay.
support potentially the pickleball. And also, be mindful, if there is any shift, if it impacts our vault needs some location to go to, and you want to have some green
Okay.
space, that if that needs to be relocated, we do have some green space that it can move to just to the east.
So I'd also like to weigh in.
Sure, go ahead, Councilman.
So one of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want to wait on what UDOT may or may not do. I've lived in Centerville over 20 years now, and all the beautification that people have been asking for along the frontage road for the last 20 years has not been done because UDOT might expand someday or UDOT might do something. My viewpoint is we do what's best for the city. If there are plans to impact us at a later date, we put our hand back out and say, pay us for the damage you've done, and we'll make a change. But if we wait on UDOT, we're going to be just like we are today with the corridor. It's pretty ugly, and the excuse has always been, well, UDOT might do something. So I don't want to wait on UDOT. I'd rather proceed, and if we do have adjustments we have to make, we'll make them.
But just respectfully, like in this case, UDOT is updating the freeway and like they're in the draft EIS phase. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna know here very quickly.
They are, but
6 to 12
that's
months.
all subject to funding. Plenty of things can come up to stop that plan dead in its tracks. So I don't think that the city should wait on that future project. If it does realign and it causes us some issues, move forward. But I just don't see that it's beneficial for us to hold our breath and wait on UDOT. We've been waiting for 20 years to put trees in on that side of the road. And, even before I was on the council, I used to complain about, you could tell when you got into Farmington because it was beautiful. Now, West Davis Corridor has been on the books for a very long time, but it didn't stop Farmington from continuing to do betterments along their portion of the corridor. So inside the park, I think we're pretty safe.
Yeah, and maybe I just weigh in that they are narrowing the scope with the draft EIS. They're not expanding it, so they're getting closer to where that final footprint will be. I don't see that it's going to wildly change. I mean, maybe there could be a change, but they're taking out alternatives to try to narrow the corridor and narrow the scope, not make it broader.
Yes, and I was gonna say, so I guess what I'm saying, as I'm listening to what all of you guys are saying, if we need additional parking for the pickleball courts, I guess I would, because UDOT is narrowing the scope and maybe they're not coming into our parking lot, I would like to see what the cost of upgrade, if we're talking about that we need additional parking for pickleball, what is that cost? Like, what is the total cost of this whole complex that
Yeah, I think we could include that into a concept estimate. This concept, what it does is it pushes the pickleball courts far enough to the east where you're not impacting that soccer field, but it's far enough to where we can mimic the parking lot to the south and mirror it to the north.
Okay.
And pick up those stalls. So
Okay.
that was something that was discussed in the kickoff meeting that we could put some numbers to see how many stalls you would get and about what the estimate would be for them. That's something that's a good idea.
Is there, Bruce, as far as the grant that you're pursuing and hoping to get maybe 700,000, I mean, can we phase this and apply again, or is that, I'm just trying to figure out how do we fund it? Because I'm a little worried about a shortfall of 1.1 million.
So if we, once you receive the award, I think you have 2 years. You have 2 years to complete the project. I would say it would be very, very bad for us to ever get another grant if we were to now pull our application and say, no, we're not interested anymore.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just wondering if you can phase it in such a way you say, hey, can we use if we get 400,000, we'll use that for this and this. Can we apply to maybe help with the parking lot improvements the next other year?
You can't have, so you can only have one grant at a time, and you can't start a new grant application until you've completed that first one. So if we were to, right now, the perceived timeline is that we would finish our final design by the first of the year and to have this ready to go out to bid in January. Award the bid in January, and a contractor as quick as weather permits, February, March, or April, if it was like this year, would start construction. It could be completed, what would you say, if it started in March, April, it'd be maybe May, June, probably by the 4th of July. 4th of July would be done. I think that puts us past, because applications are due in April, so it does put us past being able to apply for another grant before we would be done. But so it would be 2025, April of 2025 is when we could apply for another grant.
You're using that grant though towards the playground as well?
That grant's also to replace the existing playground, right?
And I don't know the feel of council, but I get more people saying they want that playground updated than the pickleball courts.
Yeah, 30 plus year old playground, yeah.
I'm assuming your application included the playground. If they approve it, they're approving a playground and pickleball.
Right,
It's not just pickleball.
we gave them a concept plan. Actually, we gave them the first option 1 that you're looking at. We gave them that concept, and so the requirements is that if you receive the grant, is everything you have in that concept you put into your actual final project. So if we put 8 courts in, we have to at least put in 8. You could do 12, but you have to at least do 8. If you put in 12 park benches, they want to see 12 park benches. So those kinds of things we need to meet, but it is just a general concept that we can add to or tweak a little bit. He's not specific on the shrubs or the trees and things like that, but some of those things can be adjusted for final plans.
Mike, now I know you got to get to another city, so any last words from you so we can cut you loose?
I don't think so, really, just kind of, yeah, just feedback on whether, what option or, you know, the elements within maybe is just, really kind of comes down to, so.
Okay, thank you, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah,
and-
no problem.
And we'll be talking to you, I'm sure,
All
more.
right, sounds
so-
good.
We can keep having this conversation with Bruce if we want to keep going, but thanks, Mike, appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other things that we want to bring up with Bruce?
Can we use this grant and get another grant to go with it? I mean, not from them, but from somebody else, or we use theirs, can we not look for other money too?
We can look for other money, but it would have to be for something that additional, so for example, bathrooms. If we got another grant through another source to help pay for bathrooms, that would be fine. But we wouldn't be able to get another grant to help pay for these same 8 courts that we've applied for this grant for. They want to know up front what all your money sources are and how you compete with other projects. And if you're getting a lot of help that's going to pay all of your other costs, then maybe you're not as competitive as someone else who doesn't have any other sources other than the grant. So to answer your question, yes, we could certainly apply for other grants, but it would have to be for like the restroom building or for parking lot. Things that are not in the plan that we applied for the grant with. So we certainly could go after those things to help with the total cost, you bet.
What about the fundraising people have talked about doing?
I just whispered to Bryce, hey, how's the fundraising going? And
We haven't hit it hard. I mean, we have the idea down. We were waiting for the concepts so that we were going out to businesses and things like that.
But can we do the fundraising on this if we're taking the grant?
Fundraising is a small proportion of what this is. I mean, I think our goal for fundraising is like 40,000, and that's not a ton of money. And so
Yeah.
I think this is a lot of money
The
for
comment that
pickleball
Gina
courts.
has made a couple of times that we haven't really dealt with is where's the money gonna come from?
Well, the options, of course, are use our reserve. We have our Fund 47 that could fund the difference for sure. That takes away from other projects. We could look at bonding and start that process, which that inherently has its own challenges. There's a cost to it. Interest rates aren't great.
Especially in today's situation.
I might be able to approach Zion's Public Finance to do another real property lease like we've done with Island View Park. And so it doesn't have all the regulatory challenges and obstacles that a bonding does. So there are options. I mean, I'm not worried necessarily, again, it's the question of, in the list of things that priorities we have as a city to accomplish, where is this one? And is this what we want to use our funding for, or ask the residents to help pay for it, whether it's through a bond or a lease payment? That's for you as a council to decide, but we've been told we want pickleball courts. Our estimates were off but I wouldn't say the costs have gone up exponentially. So I've had a conversation with other city managers who have dealt with this same increase in cost from, again, it's $60,000 a court, maybe back in the day. Now you're upwards of $120,000 a court because of post-tension concrete. But our situation is a little unique because we're also talking about lighting, which is not really included in that $120,000 a court. But right there, you're looking at $900,000 just in courts, not including everything else you want to have, amenities supporting that. So it just depends, right, in terms of what our pickleball courts look like. I mean, we have I don't want to go down, Councilmember Hurst brought it up, the location of here. We have discussed locations in the past of Porter Walton and other things like that where their earthwork wouldn't be as much, but we chose this location for a reason after much deliberation. Now that we have the hard numbers, you as a council can decide whether or not that still makes sense. And we can have another follow-up meeting and say, let's evaluate our location again if you'd like, or we recall our conversation we've already had and say, this is it, and how are we going to fund it, and discuss those options.
I might add that even though I did bring up the location, I wasn't necessarily saying we should open that up again per se, unless other people.
Put it in
feel-
perspective.
Just in perspective, I guess I'm looking at it and going, this is significantly more. I mean, these are both very nice concepts, and I don't know that we don't want to have this nice of a setup. I think it's a great thing for our community, and I think our community has said they want it, but I'm just looking at the cost and going, it's more than we thought. That's
Well, and
all.
that's,
Do
I
we-
don't know, I'm struggling, and I could be totally wrong, so I'm not saying that I know this, but I mean, people came, they wanted pickleball courts to play on. I feel like now we're giving them the Cadillac of the pickleball courts. I mean, I thought we were just gonna build some pickleball courts, and I don't know, I hate to not get any pickleball courts because we can't afford the Cadillac, I guess. I mean, these people, we've said we're gonna try and get you pickleball courts, but yeah, I don't know, are we
But
stupid to take
even the
the?
Ford is not gonna be 500,000, because just the pickleball post-tension concrete is 440,000. That's not the surfacing, it's not the nets, it's not the fencing. I mean, you gotta have
Right.
some,
Still 1.2 million, even if it's not the Cadillac. The rest of that are
Yeah,
the shrubs, the tree, anyway.
'Cause
The
that-
earthwork is a big part of it, moving dirt, because it is that little area depression, that basin.
because just court costs have doubled in 5 years.
Maybe we could get one of our contractors here in Centerville to do the work for us.
I'll let you have that conversation with the contractor.
I would be glad to go out, I would be glad
I
to
mean,
go out.
again, that's a donation, and then again, we're happy to recognize the donations, because this is the cost that we see. If they're willing to donate time and work, that's great. We fully support that.
Can we recognize the contribution, Bruce? I thought there was some limitation on this
No.
money that you can't have.
Well, it's a
Names.
donation, not a grant. It's a donation.
Donation.
Right? You're allowed to
Funding
have.
source is
up-
still
yeah.
us primarily. We can recognize the donation is, we'll name the entire complex after you and your family or your organization. I'm not saying we would do that, but I mean, that's the level,
But what I'm saying is, can we?
of course.
Thought we
Yeah,
It's
recognized
not-
it, we couldn't.
Yeah, you definitely can solicit donations, both in kind and
We've got some big
monetary.
excavating companies here in Centerville that I truly think would be willing to help with the pickleball court.
Can I
But didn't
weigh in on
we had a
that just a
problem
little
with
bit?
the soccer thing that we couldn't put somebody's name on it.
Professional sports, there was the issue with Real Salt Lake was offering to build futsal courts in the same area at one time, and they wanted to put the big Real Salt Lake logo, and part of the grant restriction is that it has to be open to the whole public, and it can't have a professional league that is for profit be benefited by the government grant. So how we got around that is we could do it in their colors, Real Salt Lake's colors, and we could do, but we just couldn't put their logo on permanently on the courts. We could do a temporary banner during part of the season, and so they would allow things like that. But that's probably what you're referring to is,
Okay, yeah,
we wouldn't be allowed to put Utah Jazz logo permanently on these courts because they're a professional for-profit sport.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin?
I would just mention that with post-tension courts, it's a very specialized field. And so with this a project like this, we would actually pre-qualify contractors. So it's a little different than just pouring a driveway. There's probably 4 contractors that are specialized enough to do this type of work.
But I'm talking
About
about the
parking is-
drainage
Oh.
that's gotta be filled in and I'm not talking about the
Oh,
actual
okay.
courts. I'm talking about the
dirt work.
The
that-
dirt work.
That makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up, that the courts, that's the only piece that I wouldn't suggest that you try.
I'm really good with a backhoe.
Hey, I like it.
I just want you to know.
I wanted you to finish that thought, but.
How much
there's-
insurance
There's only
do we-
4 people out there in the Salt Lake Valley that do pickleball courts.
Well,
Post-tension.
it's a very specialized field, so you've got Parkin, who's out of West Bountiful. He does courts from St. George all the way to Logan. So he's the most local. There's Renner Sports, they're maybe even out of Colorado. There's a couple of others that it's a very specialized type of concrete work, the post-tensioning plus the surfacing that you do afterwards. And so for something like this, we would typically pre-qualify contractors and make sure they have the experience, because you're going to be paying, you want to get what you're paying for. You don't want to get an unqualified contractor, I guess, on on the court portion.
But you wind up with some courts on the east side of Bountiful that I was playing on that were just separating. It was
Yeah.
pretty awful.
Well, if you go look at the Porter Walton basketball court, that's why you do post-tension concrete.
Yeah, and Parkin, they won that bid, and they did that court, and it's held up, it looks great.
Right.
So,
It's in fantastic shape, and it's 20 years old?
15,
15,
20, yeah, it's,
Concrete doesn't look
Yeah.
like that when it's not post-tensioned after that many years.
yeah.
And, you know, along those same lines, one of these experienced contractors, when looking at this option, talked about issues that they would have doing these short ribbons, and that there's extra cost. These would have to be done in separate pours, and so that's part of the extra cost there. And they said they've even had issues with a little curling on the edges when they have too narrow of a piece of post tension. So option one definitely gives you the better product in post tension concrete.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
It is helpful, especially when it's
Yeah, especially when
significantly
it's
less.
pretty significant. I will say, I do like the idea of the bleachers, just because I don't know if you can have too much seating. You know, like I know you go to the community park and there's lots of times when those bleachers aren't full, and then there's lots of times when they are. And I just think it's nice to have places to sit.
No, option one has space for bleachers, rather, it just doesn't have that center corridor, but where we have these park benches, we could do shade structures with bleachers. So you could still seat more people if you'd like in this option, if we went with bleachers instead of park benches. And you know, these are just park benches along here. I guess you could do bleachers over on that side too. You could add shade structures to this side if you wanted, and make the savings. I don't know that you all caught that option two has twice as many light poles as option one.
Yeah.
So your lighting is significantly higher on option two, your concrete significantly higher, and you still have room for that restroom building if you want to phase that in. That restroom building or that recreation registration building could still happen in this area. You know, maybe it's facing differently since there's not a center sidewalk, just entrances into the courts, but you
So
know.
Bruce, are you kind of recommending option one?
Are you asking for a recommendation?
Yes.
My recommendation would be option one, and with maybe a couple tweaks. I think you get more for your money in option one.
I'm kind of leaning that way
feel
too,
too.
based on the discussion, but one thing, I guess I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, for example, option two has the food truck pedestals, option one doesn't. In my mind, that might be beneficial to more than just pickleball, to have that.
Also the 4th of July, I mean, think about events
Right,
they do,
I'm
so.
thinking of other events that may draw food trucks, like, I guess I'm going. is
You
there
can
some type
still
of
put-
hybrid
You can still
we
put-
You
wanna-
could still add those in. That area
Come
could
at
still
any point
be,
in time after the,
We've been talking about
Pickleball.
installing
You know-
them anyway for 4th of July.
and
Right.
as you finish your parking lot, that could be incorporated in all of this area of food truck accommodations. As a matter of fact, even if you decide what we talked about, not doing irrigation and just doing dirt, that could be food truck parking area, all of this area, if it was just maintained as a dirt area.
I wouldn't mind.
For pickleball courts, here's our dirt.
I was thinking road base.
Just throw some
Road
chat.
base, gravel.
I mean, I hate the idea of not landscaping it, but I also cannot justify $140,000 to pull it out 3 years
I can't
later.
I can't
I
either.
think about that sound wall right now that's going up, and I'm thinking, they have to, I
Microphone. Needs a lapel.
don't know if this better be, should be recorded, but
I feel the same way about the sound wall, that it just seems like such a shame to be finally putting that new sound wall up that's going to be torn down in less than 3 years.
But the benefit is they're required to put it back in when they do the next project.
True,
So
true.
They put it
But
in,
you're
so that.
still,
have to put it in.
but I still stand.
still our
by the fact
money.
You're
still
still
wasted
spending our
money.
taxpayer
But-
money, so.
It's a win in the long run.
And I think we have to look at all of the taxpayer money. And maybe it's still worth it to landscape that if we're not going to do parking lot improvement. You know, UDOT's maybe not pushing as far east, maybe that is parking lot instead of instead of lawn, but
I think there's something to be said about having a nice entrance to the pickleball courts that's grass and green instead of being parking lot pickleball courts, because Farmington really is that way. It's parking lot pickleball courts. But if you have kind of that buffer, that green space that you can hang
well, it'll
out,
make it cooler.
it just feels, I think it feels more inviting. But, so even if
I-
it just stays grass break, or if the court doesn't shift to, I mean, if the parking lot doesn't shift to the east at all, that's your expansion to add 8 more courts in. You could add 8 more courts to the west of that, and all of a sudden now you have 16 courts. And now you have some pretty awesome tournaments. You have, in between the 8 courts, you have a center court or something like that, bleachers that divide the two. So that gives you some opportunity to expand.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, in one of the different options we looked at for when we were looking at all different places to build pickleball courts, we have space along the west side of this other, it'd be the southwest soccer field, that you could do a row of pickleball courts along there also, that, and possibly use those same light poles that light the field could also assist with lighting pickleball courts.
That's what you and I and Lynn Kennington got together.
Yes, it was Lynn Kennington's idea.
4 years ago,
Yeah, Lynn Kennington's idea was to put pickleball courts along that east sidewalk of this parking lot running south.
Is it helpful to us as a council to maybe have the Parks Committee take a look at this and weigh in?
Well, yeah, I think that was the idea, was to kind of present the design, the concept to you and the location, and then take it back to the Parks and Rec Committee and say, hey, this is what the council's recommending. Are there any tweaks or thoughts or whatever, and then come back and.
Since it started here,
They have seen this concept plan for about a year. They've been aware of this.
If you send this to the Parks Committee, they're gonna pick number 2 if you're just saying, what would you like? But if you
That's
go to
true.
them and say, the council's leaning towards number 1 with some changes,
What I think we should say, if we're gonna pass this back to them, is, hey, this is out of the budget. We budgeted 500,000 and we're hoping we're gonna get a grant for whatever. And, what can you guys see that could, like, how can we streamline it a little bit, make it a little less expensive? What's really important, is it worth it to wait a little? I know you said we've applied for the grant, and we've gotta kind
Gotta
of go
use
with
it.
that, but,
we don't wanna lose 700,000 or 400,000.
no, we don't. But
I
I'm
do
just
think
wondering
your
if they
costs
can
will go
say to
up
us-
as you wait.
Yeah, if we wait, the costs are gonna go up too.
Yeah. I just think we could,
I like that, but that's what I say. I've seen things go to committees, and then they're offended because they come back and say, this is great, and we're like, whoa, we were thinking less, not more. So we need to be specific
I
when we
think we need
take
to
it
tell
to
them
them.
we're looking for things that can
something
be
less,
cut.
not more.
are there
So
features that can be cut and added later?
I just
Your
don't
site
want-
amenities, you can have your concrete pads for your park benches, but not put your park benches in. You can not run your plumbing and stub off for your drinking fountain and your bathroom, but not put your bathroom in or your drinking fountains in. You can put your pedestals in and your conduits for your light poles, but not put your light poles and light fixtures in. There's things like that you could.
But with the grant, don't we have to do a lot of that?
I don't know if our concept plan showed lighting.
I don't think so, as long as we're
Yeah.
meeting half the match and
Right.
the main pickleball courts is accomplished.
If we're not going to add those things, though, I would hope we'd come up with some type of game plan that doesn't mean 30 years from now, we still don't have lights on the
Right,
pickleball courts.
right.
I-
But yet
I
it
would
is
like to
cheaper,
see
whatever
a-
we build now is cheaper.
We do have conduits run to all 4 ball fields for lights that we put in 35 years ago.
Yeah, I'm saying, I
Right,
mean,
but I'm just saying, if we say, no, we can't afford this now, we wait 3 years, it's gonna cost us double
right,
that.
right.
And the people really want the pickleball courts, even if it's the budget pickleball court, we could give them that now, and then, like you said, work on what we can afford each year, as opposed to giving them nothing and having prices go up.
Right, right. I think that's an option. I think the Parks Committee would get and understand that.
Right. I just think we have to be very careful, because like I said, I've just watched us, we go to somewhere, and then they have no idea what we really wanted, because we're just like, oh, what would you like for pickleball courts? Like this or this? And they're like, oh, we'd love this. And then we're like, oh, well, no, that wasn't what we meant. And then they're mad at us.
Well, I mean, that's why we've got this opportunity to
Right.
look at it.
And that's
so
what
just
I'm saying. I think your idea is really good to go to them and say, we can't afford this.
Well,
So
we're
they
not-
realize we're not coming in for champagne, we're coming in for them to cut it
We're
back.
not going to them with nothing there and saying, just take it away,
Right.
develop, design the courts as you want, cost is no limitation. We're coming to them with two plans, with the cost there, and with the premises that, hey, we want to see, get your ideas of how we can possibly bring this cost down and still be it nice.
Yeah, I like that
You
idea
know?
a lot.
And I think they're connected with other people in the community that they can talk about it, like, yeah, we don't care if there's lights, or maybe that won't be the thing. They'll say, well, we'd rather live without this, but the lights are really important.
Because that day when you heard they just want pickleball courts, a lot of that was Parks and Rec Committee members and former Parks and Rec Committee
Right,
members. So-
right.
Yeah.
So that they understand, they've been in that industry, many of them. You know, that we have, what, 3 members on that Parks Committee that are in recreation, so.
And lights would be amazing, and I think, but yeah, really, when you think about the summer months, it's pretty light till 10 o'clock, a lot of them.
But maybe in their plan, they could
They're
say,
like
we can
Salem
live, we
Street
can live
issue.
without lights, but will you consider funding that as the next most important thing? You know, that comes
Lights been
next.
gone for 5 weeks, 4 weeks.
I think people would understand, you know, if you cut some of those things out, but it needs to be in writing saying that on the next year after that, here's the
Right.
game plan, because, yeah, I mean, I would love to put $1.7 million and put lights on all the ball fields before we build pickleball, but,
Yeah.
you know, if there's a plan set in place that's saying, okay, we're gonna build this year 2, it's lights, year 3, it's the concessions, it's the bathroom, you know, as long as there's a plan, I think people will buy into what you're trying to build.
I think, you mentioned the ball fields, and I agree with you. I think we've got a community that loves that too. So, I mean, that would be nice if that was in the Parks Master Plan, like, these are the things that are most important, and, you know, that's what I'm hoping the Parks Committee's gonna do for us, is prioritize doing that. So council has some suggestions every year that they can possibly fund.
It might need to be. They regularly update a priority list for the city council, at least every year. It might be due for them to do it again, but, and ball field lights have been on the list. They are quite a ways down the priority list. Parking lot lights and playground were up there towards the top, so. And those are happening, so that's great.
Yeah, I think if they can update that priority list, that would be awesome.
I think we have direction. Any last words, or you guys ready to move on?
I think we're ready.
Thanks, Bruce.
That was a great discussion.
Thanks for all your work on it. It was, All right. Let's go back. Nate, could I have you come up? So, this is all Nate Plaisir, who's the Director of Finance.
Nice to meet you.
Just stand there for a second, Nate, while I chat, okay? In your packet, you'll see that we have his department, and you're the only one here from your department, right? Yeah. Okay, so we want everybody up. They received a Certificate of Achievements for Excellence in Financial Reporting, Award of Financial Reporting to the Finance Department of Centerville City, Utah, and then a letter that's addressed to me that says, "We are pleased to notify you that your annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022 qualifies for GFGA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. When a Certificate of Achievement is awarded to a government, an Award of Financial Reporting Achievement, AFRA, is also presented to the individual or individuals or department designated by the government as primarily responsible for having earned the certificate. This award has been sent to the submitter as designated on the application. We hope that you will arrange for a formal presentation, which we're doing tonight, and then they included a sample news release. We hope that your example will encourage other government officials in the efforts to achieve and maintain an appropriate standard of excellence in financial reporting. Now, Nate, what I want you to do is I want you to help us all come up to speed of who makes up your financial department and what positions they do and their responsibilities that they have.
All right, so in our finance department, we have Luann Child, who's our treasurer. And unfortunately for us, she's leaving, but fortunate for her, she's going to enjoy her retirement. We also have Tana Schmidt, who is an accountant. And then we have 2 accounting techs that were recently hired this spring, Bethany Frank and Crystal Nelson. And they've done awesome.
And what are Bethany and Crystal and Tana doing their responsibilities?
So Tana oversees our utility billing processes. She also oversees our accounts receivable, and is also overseeing our cemetery records and coordination. Bethany, as Bryce mentioned earlier, is helping out with HR, some of those duties and some payroll-related things as well. And then Crystal, her main responsibility is accounts payable. And then, of course, all of them help out with our customer service and help our customers with their utility bills.
Thank you. And you can walk in that main door, and they're all right there, and they greet you very. Not only have they received this award, but they greet. At least when I come in, they greet me very, very friendly. You know, and they're great staff. So, what else do you have to say about your department and about this award, which is well deserved?
No, our department's awesome. As you said, they're the first faces you see when you come in, and if someone calls the city, chances are they're going to be the ones that answer. They do a great job of representing the city and all that we stand for. So, yeah, we have a great staff here at Centerville. We're lucky to have all of them.
23 years running, or 25 years running?
Yeah, 23 years in a row, so we're glad we didn't screw up the tradition of excellence.
Don't mess it up now.
We'll try to keep it going.
I will share that Nate was probably by far one of the best hires we've made. He's come in and done so much great work in helping us with finance. We all enjoy, Mike and I talk about this often, how much we appreciate Nate and his guidance and helping us just look at our financials so much differently. So appreciate Nate and, of course, the rest of the team. And I know this 23 years in a row, but appreciate him continuing that tradition. I think he has taken our finances to the next level. And we still have more to do, right?
Plenty more to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
So, well deserved. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it. And they're working this week with the auditors who are in town, so they keep busy. All right, let's see, business items, we're skipping down to our summary action. There's only one item on summary action. It's the bond reduction, Summerhill Lane subdivision start warranty. Any questions on this one?
Is there that much sidewalk in there yet?
That's a pretty big
Do you have people to ask here? Who do you want to ask?
How much sidewalk is in there? I don't know.
$211,000 worth.
Maybe more than that. That's just the bond we received.
What did Lisa say? Sorry.
They want to know how many sidewalks are in there, and I said $211,000 worth.
Yes, so what they did is they had a few punch list items for streetlights, monuments, some drainage items they were trying to work through. So a while back, they posted a separate bond for the sidewalk so that they could get the sidewalk in and then get that bond released and get into warranty for. So this is a separate bond from the subdivision. We're only starting warranty on the sidewalks. So all the sidewalks are in.
So are the sidewalks
All the
are
sidewalks,
all
all
in?
the sidewalks are in, all the pedestrian ramps are in, but they're still lacking some street lights working.
And when you talk about the warranty, what happens if if Symphony breaks sidewalk as they're building homes?
So we have a 1-year warranty. We will check all of those sidewalks at the end of 1 year, and then we also get to check them at C of O, Certificate of Occupancy, for the home. So
Okay.
when the home is constructed, we get another check on those sidewalks.
If they've broken panels, they replace them?
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll say homeowners are usually pretty, pushy with the developer
Yeah,
getting replaced too.
I'm
so.
sure they'll be squeakier than.
I've had a couple in my home, and they were good about coming out.
And I think they'll be in another month or so for the subdivision warranty to start as well. They're getting close, but this was just a little bit ahead of the subdivision.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, if you got all your questions, motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve the bond resolution and start of warranty for the Summerhill Lane subdivision sidewalk bond in the amount of $187,910.80.
Second.
Motion is second, further discussion? Let's vote. Councilwoman Meekum, start.
Aye.
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 Councilman, oh, there you go, there's the aye. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, let's go to minutes. We have minutes to approve from September 5th work session, September 5th city council, September 5th closed session minutes. Is there anything that anybody saw that they want to make a change on? If not, motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as stated by the mayor.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next thing is the August financial report. It's prepared and presented in your packet. This is not a quarterly month, so unless you have specific questions in looking it over, we'd still have Nate here to ask. Otherwise, that was just there for your information. And he will present it the next quarter, which would be the end of September. Any questions on that? Is everybody good? Okay, council report. Councilman McEwen, you have the council report for us?
I do. So I'm going to report on the mosquito abatement district first. And I always get this question this time of year, which is how long are they going to continue doing the fogging and spraying? We usually continue even though we're reducing the crews because a lot of our crews are school-age kids, so they're back in school. So we're still doing weekend spraying. Mosquitoes will continue to fly until it hits 55 degrees at night. So we're going to continue to do mosquito abatement treatments in the district until you see that temperature at night. So that's generally the first question I get on that. And then as far as like the amount of mosquitoes that we're seeing relative to years past, it's about the same. There hasn't been a significant change in the numbers nor in the level of infection for West Nile virus in the state, as well as the number of ponds. One of the things that people also point out to me is that Davis County usually reports West Nile before other places. That is because we have our own lab and we are capable of sampling a lot more than those who have to send their stuff off to the state lab. So that makes it easier for us to detect and treat. We put that lab in, well, I guess it's been about 4 years ago now, and it's been very successful in helping mitigate some of the problems that we've had with other testing facilities and getting the turnaround. We're continuing to expand the drone fleet. We've been very successful with that, and so we've picked up another drone to do some more treatments, which is great because it lets us get into a lot of these tight areas like around Sky Park Airport and other areas where we can fly these small missions and get the mosquito abatement treatment that's not really possible from the plane, and otherwise we'd have to treat it by hand or from an ATV. Any questions on mosquito abatement before I move on to the Whitaker?
Doesn't seem like there is, Councilman, so move on.
Okay, moving on. Just talking with Lisa on the CLG projects that were done. The state was very pleased, and they're providing the $10,000 match, which will be sent to the city within the next 2 weeks. Our $10,000 comes from the RAP, so we got $20,000 worth of work done. Some of the projects were the ridgeline repair, the ceiling on the shingles on the home in the summer kitchen. There was exterior painting done, caulking to all the windows, ceiling of the stone and mortar exterior. They did a restore and varnish the east and west doors. They were able to seal the sandstone step on the kitchen. They were able to sand and seal all the thresholds and the entrances. Reassembled and painted the kitchen door and was able to extend their rain gutter downspouts. They were able to repair and seal the foundation and repair the cracks on the exterior ceiling and walls from the earthquake and repaint. So they got quite a bit done for that $20,000. Of course, as we all know, that there's a lot of folks who are in the docent community as well as board members for the Whitaker who donate a ton of their time. So I'd say that the $20,000 was mostly materials, and I don't even have an estimate for what we were able to do with the volunteer help that made all that happen. That is the report.
Thank you so much. Very good report. We appreciate it. Any questions on Whitaker of him? Okay, anything, thank you again, Councilman McKeon. Anything pressing that we need to know about with any of your other committees? Okay, we'll go to the mayor's report. It's been a busy 2 weeks. I finished meeting with all the principals at our 4 elementaries and our junior high and high school, and they are very excited to support the city where they can, or have the city support them. One idea that came from Principal Hogue at Centerville Junior is, he says, is it possible ever to have our kids come and be recognized in the city council meeting? And he offered, hey, our choir, that sort of thing. I mean, they're available to help out with functions you have and that type of thing. So, and I had that throughout. I came back, as Bryce said, and we chatted about maybe some ideas that we could have recognizing our children at our schools. But they were very good meetings. Basically, all new administrators in the last 2 to 3 years, because that's how they move them around. In conjunction with that, since we're on that topic, we had some Centerville Elementary kids today come over because they're studying government, and they were over here, and Brent helped me out, and Bryce and the chief today on give them a little tour of City Hall, and they spent about a half hour, and hopefully they were rewarded as much as we were, but they had a lot of questions. I know that, so it was nice. I've met with Wasatch Integrated Waste Management 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, and one thing that is being talked about there's about half of the cities in Davis County that don't have recycling. You know, I didn't know that till about a year ago, and they're talking about potentially them taking on the recycling. We don't know how we feel about that, but you know, more will come from that. I know that we're talking about potentially Brandon and I and a couple others going up and taking it or tour up there with our city. I went to, there was a League of City and Towns meetings, and at the same time that was going on, we had our day of service going on. So a week ago Friday, we had a nice ceremony here at 8 in the morning where we honored our first responders and policemen, firemen. A little great posting of the colors, great barbershop quartet singing the national anthem. And then you may have heard the sirens going around town as they went by our schools, and the principals thanked me for that. And Centerville Elementary School's principal showed me the picture of the kids out lining the streets and some of their special education children, how excited they were to see them coming by. I went to a Young Power sports event that same weekend where spoke there briefly, where they were putting together 400 kits for these teen centers. I think I spoke about the teen centers last time with you when Viewmont's principal showed me the teen center that they have put it on. And those are all funds that are raised privately, And we're, and each school is gonna have one of those. The Davis Loan Fund, I'll bring that up again. I brought that up once or twice. It's, as part of my responsibilities with COG, I chair that once a month. And just want to remind you again that if any of you know businesses that they're Davis County-based businesses, it's another option for them to go to be able to get funding for their businesses. And so if you have any of that, please reach out to me. Checking off what we got. Oh, the day of service was very nice. We had things done outside here in City Hall with the gravel outside, and we had fire hydrants painted. There was great activities going on all through the city. Fire board meeting yesterday, other than outside of going over the monthly financials and having the audit presented, just for your knowledge, we have purchased a new brush truck, and we approved for them to retire the old brush truck, which was, oh man, 25, 30 years old or something like that. So that took place as well too. Any other questions for me? That's my report. Okay, city manager report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few items. First one was the branding effort. We're making pretty good progress on the branding. We've met with staff, the committees, council, of course. We're just about to prepare, and we're discussing how to go out to the public for their input. We have preliminary ideas that they would like to present to us. But we're moving along nicely on the branding effort, and we're anxious to see what they have so far and all the research they've done. I had a UIA public hearing yesterday. They met to discuss bonding for $30 million. The $30 million is not necessarily attributed to one specific city. The intent of that is to expand the network into areas that there's a high demand for Utopia to come into those areas. And so they anticipate there'll be a great deal of revenue generated from those areas. So a $30 million bond, and the hope is that it generates $6 or $5 million a year going forward. A pretty good plan, and all the cities supported that. Again, still some questions about us bonding for $30 million and kind of speculating on what kind of returns we'll get. I worry, I don't have the history with Utopia that some of you may have, and that is, we had to bond to save Utopia. So the hope is this $30 million won't come back to us cities, and we're required to make those payments. But anyway, as of right now, we're not required to make those payments. It should be taken care of.
They should never be able to require us to make them, should they?
Depends on if we want to save our investment. That's the question. They can't require you. We weren't required to bond for what we did, but if we wanted to save the agency of the Utopia.
We didn't pay it.
So, well, we bonded for what we did to help.
To start with, but the second time they came back, we did.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So we'll have options, but again, I'm not overly concerned. It's just a concern, but I'm not overly concerned about the direction.
I'm a little more concerned, just in case you want to know.
And then I will be out of the office September 29th to October 5th, attending my annual ICMA conference. So I will not be at the next city council meeting. I'll be attending remotely. Any questions for me? We talked about a lot of things that we've been working on as staff. I think Bryce could have gone on another hour just updating on things that we're working on, what his staff is working on, as well as the administrative side. And Lisa's been helping us out with, but really focusing on the risk management, HR policies, and just really getting more streamlined. Differentiating duties, assignments to help, so Lisa isn't doing everything for us. Taking some things off her plate, even though she's incredible at it. But anyway, so we've been working on streamlining and becoming more efficient. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else to bring up, I would entertain a motion then to go to closed session to not return to a council meeting.
Make a motion that we move to a closed session with no intent to return to this session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Council adjourned, thank you.